Bonjour. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. Must also thank some of my colleagues who have preceded me this morning by justifying why an Englishman is stood in front of a conference on wildfire. I don't now have to justify it. We do have a problem, and that is why we are starting to engage more with our colleagues across Europe. And that's what I'm here to do, to talk about a collaboration project which ourselves in Northumberland and a number of partners are involved in. And that's the European Forest Fire Networks Project, or UFO-FireNet for short. And I'm specifically going to talk about one of the products, one of the deliverables that came out of that project. And that's the European Glossary for wildfires and forest fires. Please pardon my use of the term wildfires. I know colleagues tend to favour forest fires. It's one of those anachronisms. When I talk about wildfires, it includes forests, it includes grassland fires. It's just one of those differences, I think, that exists between us on our little island and the rest of Europe. So, the presentation will basically be split into three sections. Firstly, I'll just introduce where I'm from. I'll then introduce the UFO-FireNet project and end with the main bulk of the presentation on the glossary. So, I'm from the county of Northumberland, and that is the most northerly county in England, which means we border with Scotland. In terms of the UK, it's quite a large county. It's one of the largest at 5,000 square kilometres. But conversely, we have a very small population of just 320,000 people. So, characterise a very rural county. Added to this, we have 50% of our population live within just 5% of the land area of the county. So, when you get out of the southeast corner of the county, it is very rural, very sparse. And that obviously has benefits for tourism, but also has problems and difficulties for us as a fire and rescue service. As you can see from the map on the screen, we have 17 fire stations, 2 of which have full-time professional firefighters, 2 of which have full-time professional firefighters just during the daytime, and then the rest which are we call retained fire stations, which means we have part-time firefighters who have other jobs usually and have a pager or a mobile phone, and when there's an emergency they are called to the fire station to go out to the emergency. We also have a very unique situation among UK fire and rescue services in that we have an island which is inhabited just off our coastline called Holy Island, and that has a tidal causeway which creates problems because all of our fire engines are usually based on the mainland. So we have a garaged appliance, an appliance in a garage on the island, and when there's an emergency we have the RAF, the Royal Air Force, who drop our crews onto the island to get the fire engine to put the fire out. So, thankfully, we don't have many situations on the island. Most of the situations are people getting stuck on the tidal causeway. So, as with any UK fire and rescue service, we have a single mantra which governs our work around the 3 facets of prevent, protect, and respond. We're involved in community safety work, trying to prevent incidents from happening in the first place, and we have a legal responsibility to do that now since the 2004 law. We also enforce fire safety legislation, which means we ensure that businesses, commercial premises, industrial premises keep to the law with regards to fire safety. We respond to emergencies. I've got it in red. Wildfire is one of the emergencies we must respond to. Also, more recently, we've been involved in civil contingencies, civil protection. When we do have emergencies, how do we look after the population and deal with them? So, in summary, we have a very picturesque rural county. Please come and visit if you're in the UK. But we do have a real risk of wildfire. And to hopefully silence the critics, we do have wildfires of 1,000 hectares or more. And within the English landscape, the Scottish landscape, that is a problem because our populations aren't that far away from these fires. So the fire I pictured there was one of our more severe in recent years, in 2007, where we lost 1,000 hectares of moorland and forest. We lost a site of special scientific interest because this burned on a rare peat bog, which is a catastrophe for us in the UK, but for the world as well, because we have a large section of the world's peat bogs. So we've realised we have a problem in the UK. Some of the fire and rescue services are a bit quicker to try and address that issue than others, and we in Northumberland have been trying to lead the way. We're now considered the lead fire and rescue service in the UK for wildfire operations and training. So we're now on board with the idea that we have a problem and we need to address it. And one of the key ways that we think we can address that is to collaborate across Europe and across the world to learn best practice, examples of good practice from everywhere else, particularly from countries such as in the Mediterranean that have a long established problem of wildfires. So this is why we're involved in UFO-FINET project. And this was funded by the European Union through the Interreg 4C programme. It was a 26-month project which came to an end last year. And the basic aim of the project was to enable and facilitate transfer of good practice between partner regions so that we could all work at improving our policies and procedures, learning from one another and improving and reducing the risk of forest fires and wildfires. We had 13 partners involved in the project. It was led by the Association of Town Councils and Municipalities in Attica and Greece. Northumberland Fire and Rescue from the UK was involved, but also 2 partners from France, Entente and ONF. As you can see from the map, that we had 8 countries represented within that partnership, representing the 4 corners of Europe. And I think that's a key strength to this project, and also something which I think has been coming out in the other presentations, that wildfire is a European project, European problem, and that we all need to be collaborating, we in the north, in the east, south and west. And we certainly found some really interesting results from working with partners from across the continent. The project activities were arranged around 5 key themes, so each theme led by a different partner. So just to give you an idea of the kind of things we were looking at, we had wildfire suppression tactics, prevention and detection of wildfires, cartography of wildfire risks and hazards, training and simulation, and then restoring land that had been burnt by wildfires. And this final topic for us in the UK was particularly interesting. With regards to wildfire, we haven't really taken much thought in what happens to the land after it's been burned and what might happen depending on the different tactics we adopt to put that fire out. So it was definitely eye-opening for us. And the project, as you would imagine from a big EU project spanning 2 years, had a number of key deliverables. And I haven't got time to go through those all now, but I'll just talk to you about perhaps one of the key deliverables, which is this European glossary. But please feel free to speak to me afterwards if you need any more information about the other elements. So, this is what it looks like. Possibly doesn't do it justice on screen, but this is a glossary of terms and definitions, more than 800, arranged within different chapters. It was a substantial piece of work which took about 18 months. But what happened during the early stages of the project, we realized that we were all using a different language. So we were coming together to talk about different issues and different problems, and we weren't quite understanding what each other were talking about. We were either using different terms, or we were using the same terms but attaching different meanings to them. So we thought, how are we going to get over this? The main thing we need to do is, before we start, is actually to try and establish a common language. So that was our aim. And the purpose of this was to help us through the project, but it was also to create a resource and a tool that we could use afterwards to try and improve cross-border collaboration in Europe, so that from this point onwards we can start using the same language. Now the work was very collaborative. It was coordinated by us in Northumberland, but substantial contributions from all of the partners, along with more than 80 external experts from around the world. And we've taken inspiration from various places, which I'll come on to a bit later. I mean, what we thought about is very easy to kind of sit down and start working through an A to Z list of terms. We thought maybe we need to go beyond this and create something which is very highly usable in different contexts as a training tool and as a reference tool. So firstly, we looked at 16 glossaries from around the world. We looked at Australia, United States, etc., to look at how they've firstly formulated the content, so what definitions are in use around the world, but but also how it's arranged. And through that evaluation work, we identified some gaps within Europe. Any existing glossaries within Europe were highly focused, so they were kind of aimed at researchers, so not practitioners, or they were aimed at foresters, so they didn't perhaps kind of have wide applicability to fire and rescue or other agencies. We then looked at the glossaries from outside the EU and realised there was some excellent terminology out there which we could borrow, but also some of it which is designed for a different context, so it didn't quite work. So we knew that we had some work to do. And importantly, through that design process, we got firm commitment from all of the partners to actually work towards implementing and using this glossary once it's finished within their region, within their country. So this is some of the inspiration we took. We looked at the USA, Canada, Australia. We looked within the different member states. So we looked at documents which were perhaps not specific to wildfire, but which contained important terminology which is still of relevance to wildfire. And then we looked at how we lay out and structure the glossary. And we looked at a particular handbook, which has been mentioned already today, produced for the Fire 4 project, with terms translated into 6 languages, highly visual document, if you ever get a chance to look at it, with photographs next to each of the terms, all the translations, but also structured in a thematic way. Rather than just an A to Z, this book is in thematic sections. And you can have a look at it on a website at the minute. So we thought, this is a good way to go. This could be a really useful resource, both for the partners and wider. So what we came up with was a document which was structured around 12 thematic chapters, which were arranged within 3 different sections. The idea being that you can view this document as a whole, or you can take individual elements and use it as a training tool, perhaps reinforcing particular training modules. So the first section was the wildfire environment. That included 4 chapters: fire behaviour, fuel, topography, weather. Terminology that you need just to understand what is happening at a wildfire. Irrespective of putting that wildfire out, how do you need to understand how it's behaving? The second section, we then looked at suppression operations. What terminology do you need when you turn up to that fire, or when you're planning to turn up to that fire? So we had separate chapters for tactics, safety, obviously being a key chapter, incident command, aerial operations, and equipment. And I must admit that the aerial operations chapter was particularly challenging. In the UK, we do not really have aerial operations, so we had to rely very heavily on our colleagues in Entente and the rest of the Mediterranean. That may be something that will change in the future, but I don't know. I'm not a politician. So. And also equipment as well. We then had a third section, realizing that what you do before a wildfire and what you do afterwards are really important as well. And it's important that different agencies are aware of the terminology and the work involved. So this one was focused on preparation, prevention, and recovery. So we had chapters on prevention and detection, fire investigation, and restoration. So in practice, this is what the glossary looks like on paper, in electronic form and paper format. Each chapter has a header page with a photograph kind of illustrating what's going on within that chapter, a definition there. You can see we've used a definition from NFPA 921. We didn't just go about making up definitions just to make up new definitions. Where the partnership and the experts involved identified definitions out there which were perfectly good for the situation, we borrowed them and we've referenced them. There was no point in simply creating a whole new language to work with. You see from the second page on the right-hand side, basic tabular form, terms on the left, and then the definitions on the right. So just to give you an idea, this chapter is 12 pages long, 119 terms within that chapter. That's not that that's a massive chunk of the 800 terms, because some of the terms that appear in the other chapters as well. So we've got terms appearing in multiple chapters, enabling you to take it out and use it independently. So just as an example, this chapter for fire investigation includes terms on fire behaviour, and it also includes terms related to the practical organisation of fire investigation using scientific method, etc. And this particular chapter, we had some assistance from experts in Italy, France, Australia and the USA So and that's beyond the scope of the initial partnership who also participated. Now, to make a glossary usable in Europe, you need to translate it because English is very limiting. We began with the English translation, which took 18 months, and my colleagues in various countries have been working to translate that, for which I salute you because it was a massive task. We already have translations in Slovak, Greek, and Polish. They're already available. The French translation is virtually ready. I think it's just formatting to go. And then the Italian translation should be done by the end of the year. So, if we make some summary conclusions about what we did on Youth for Finite and this glossary, the partnership think that what we've done is we've created a good training and reference resource which can be used across Europe. And we think that that has a potential to improve future collaboration and cooperation before, during, and after wildfires or forest fires. And that's for that reason why we're out here promoting the glossary. But we're also working really hard to implement this within our own areas. So I'll just end with an example from how we're doing that in the UK. Up until today, we haven't had an operational manual for wildfire in the UK. Everything's been very localised and not driven centrally. However, the Scottish Government took on the task about 2 years ago to develop the first operational manual, which will be published next week for adoption in Scotland, but will then be adopted in England, Wales, Northern Ireland soon after. So what we've been working with the Scottish Government is to try and integrate the Youth for Finite glossary within their manual, which is going to be adopted by the Fire and Rescue Services. So we've been in an easy position in a way because the UK didn't start with the terminology, so we didn't have anything to work with to start with. So we've managed to combine these kind of different projects to our benefit. Obviously, the situation is slightly different in the other member states, but I do understand that there's been quite a lot of progress in adopting this glossary. You can get electronic copies of the glossary. That's the main way that's available. At the moment, it's available on this website, but soon on the UFO Finite website as well. I've brought with me a very, very, very limited number because my suitcase wasn't big enough to carry too many. But I have 3 paper copies and half a dozen CDs containing the glossary and other resources that we produced during the Youth for Finite project. So first come, first served. And if I haven't got enough, maybe if you leave me your contact details. You can get further information about Youth for Finite from many places in English and in French. A number of websites out there. And if you want French information, ONF and Entente have each got a section on their website. And this is our lovely countryside in Northumberland. I'll leave you with that. That's what we're trying to protect. And thank you very much for your attention.